Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for a special address and a case study presentation. Joining us this morning is our speaker, Mr. Anuj Kumar, who's a co-founder and the managing director of Affle. In fact, he was amongst the first to join the Affle founding team beginning in 2006, while the company was in the early stages of inception. And over the last 8 years, under his leadership, his team has worked with several top marketers in Asia to help deliver end-to-end mobile advertising solutions through Affle's products as well as platforms. So can we have a warm round of applause? Please help me welcome on stage our next speaker, Mr. Anuj Kumar.
Hello. Hi everybody, good morning. Can you hear me? Yes. So good to meet you all early in the morning. I think you've heard some very good discussions earlier in the day. I think what I'm going to talk about is really around, I see that obviously today a lot of people out here are companies, are belonging to companies, are entrepreneurs who are chasing a dream which is related to mobile apps. Now there is so much money being spent in building these mobile apps in terms of monetizing, in terms of promoting. Now the key question out there in front of us is, how is it that we can work together to ensure that we can measure the value of what we are doing on our mobile app strategy, and how is it that we can maximize the ROI through that? So I think that's pretty much what I'm going to talk about. It's a quick 30-minute session, no real case study. I think it's a lot of data points and understanding of the market, which I'm hopeful will benefit many of you. I think just to share a short background, I think personally I've had a big kind of a head start in the mobile app space. I think as I'm the founder of Affle, we set up a company which was, at 9 years ago, we started building a mobile app, and this is pre-smartphone, and reached out to almost 20 million users who downloaded our apps in that era. So I think times have changed, the world has evolved, and today if you look at purely in terms of numbers, I think India is really providing mind-boggling statistics for smartphones, for the app economy. So I don't think I'll spend too much time out there. Just a quick check on the audience so that we are relevant to the people out here. How many of you in this room are belonging to companies or are entrepreneurs who already have mobile apps as a strategy, which is a key part of your growth plans? Just a quick show of hands. How many of you are there in companies or are entrepreneurs who are moving towards that change where apps are going to be a significant part of what you're going to do? Yep. From what I see, maybe around 40% of the audience out here in this room are audiences which have already embraced mobile apps, and that's critically playing a key part of whether it's their e-commerce business, their travel business. It's all being driven on the mobile app side. 30% odd from just a raise of hands which is moving towards that, and then there is another 30 which is kind of uncertain. For that 30 which is uncertain, I guess you'll find enough and more articles on the internet in terms of what's really happening on the mobile app side, how smartphones are today over 150 million in India. Even at that number, we are only around 10 to 15% of penetration for smartphones. India is the largest market in terms of growth rate for smartphones. Companies which are running e-commerce businesses have already seeing 60–70% of their transactions on mobile devices, and many of them are embracing app-only strategies. So enough and more data. I think that's the end of the data for my presentation. For rest of it, you can definitely look out on the internet. You'll find a lot more, much more than what I've talked about. So what I'll focus on is primarily the 70% of the audience which is really already has a mobile app strategy, or parts of the audience which are trying to build one. And how is it that you can measure and maximize from that? Obviously, all of you can reach out to me. That's my Twitter handle. Just connect with me. I'll be happy to respond to any questions, etc. you may have on this session and otherwise. Zooming back into the topic, measuring and maximizing returns. Now, this really starts from the first phase when you have built out your mobile app. Now, when the mobile app has been built, it could be any sector you're building the mobile app for. The key question which each of us grapple with is, obviously, the apps needs to go out to the consumer for us to understand what we have built out is really valuable and start making money on it. What we do on that, the first level is really around advertising, promoting, PR, around ensuring that we can have more audiences embrace our app, or maybe simply put, more people download the apps on their devices. As entrepreneurs, as enterprises, we believe that more people have the app on the phone, and we pay a heavy price to be part of that real estate. So that's the first step which we usually take. The second, we've spent a lot of the money which we have raised through all the efforts, bulk of it going in on media spends to acquire users. Comes the second step in terms of understanding how users are consuming, what are they doing on the apps, how they're using the data, what is the kind of behavior. From there flows in terms of now you've got hundreds of users who are using your app. You're figuring out that, okay, these are certain set of users who are loyal users. These are others who are possibly not using it as occasionally. And there are others who are reaching the stage of putting things in the cart but not closing the transaction on the device. And that's where your CRM, re-engagement, all those plans start. Finally, after the end result of that is that once you've done that successfully, you've reached a phase where you're aiming for loyalty, where monetization becomes a key KPI for you. And different people in this room are at different stages of their mobile app strategy. Some are in the first stage who are just building. Others have built and are going out there to acquire users. And while there are others, more mature companies, who have done all that, they did that a year or two ago, and now face the challenge around monetizing and building loyalty to what they have done. So pretty much, I think that's a representation of how the mobile app ecosystem or the life cycle is and what different organizations are grappling with right now. I think in this quick session over the next 20 minutes, what I'll try to do is to try and look at each of those 4 areas and see what are the few things which you can do differently, which can help you ensure that what you are doing on your mobile app strategy is giving you much greater ROI than maybe some of the peers or even some of the more established companies who we all look up to, but maybe some things are happening out there may not be so right. So I think let's zoom back in terms of the first part, which is audience acquisition, getting people to download your mobile apps. That's what the first part of the mobile app marketing or distribution comes in. Now I think as we all fairly well, most of us intuitively would understand that for any advertising to be effective, it has to reach out to the most relevant user. So if it's an app which is an e-commerce app, then obviously it's to reach out to somebody who's interested in e-commerce kind of applications. He's the kind of guy who you would want to see the advertising for your app. And obviously what you're showcasing in that message, in that advertising, is around the experience. Now that experience is relevant to what this guy is looking for. If you do both your jobs well, then obviously you've got a user who's got a higher likelihood of being loyal and providing ROI on your app. So those are the 2, and obviously for the first part, relevant user, that's where comes in a lot of data analytics, a lot of attribution analytics, and there are enough and more companies doing things around that which are helping you reach out to the right user. The second part is more art, which is more around how you communicate, what kind of messaging, is it in terms of your creative strategy, is it a single creative which is going out to all, or is it customizable and it's like dynamic based on what the user is doing. So I think all of those things make a big difference in terms of ensuring that the money which you are spending in terms of getting people to download your apps is getting you the users who are likely to be more loyal, are likely to transact more, because as enterprises, as entrepreneurs, that's the core objective. Now we may have some intermediary objectives in our jobs where we've built out an app and we have some targets that as a CMO that we need to reach 100,000 users this month and I'll spend all my money there. But finally that 100,000 is an intermediary step. Nobody can be happy with 100,000 users. What do those users do? How did it transact? What did they consume? Those are the metrics which finally matter in any business which has to be sustainable. So I think these things obviously are quite obvious, but become the key drivers of effectiveness, and for a lot of organizations they get missed out. I think what makes it even more challenging is it's not really around using out to these users, but really the whole ad tech ecosystem has become fairly complicated for any person who's not within that universe to really understand what's going on. So if you don't come in from a digital advertising background and you meet somebody who's running a company or in the sales team of a digital advertising company, I'm sure you all have had cases where you've been bamboozled by the number of terms thrown out to you. There are ad networks, ad exchanges, DSPs, SSPs, yield management platforms, you name it, DMPs. All of those terminologies can only confuse you. So there is enough and more clutter for your app to reach the user who you want to reach. there are at least 50 intermediary companies who are looking to make their revenue and business models within that ecosystem. And each one of them, when they're coming out to sell to you, are obviously making a case that how they should be the company where the largest share of that 1/50th should go to. Now, how do you grapple such an ecosystem which is fairly fragmented? I think we need to understand that while the ecosystem is fairly fragmented, there are two fundamental changes which have happened in the advertising ecosystem, which are really helping entrepreneurs and app developers to a significant extent. So the first part is around consolidation. Now today you see that there are 50 players out there in between, but really if you look at digital advertising, almost 40% of digital advertising is consolidated between two big players. That's Google and Facebook. The rest 50-60% is where all the others come in. So that's one fundamental shift which has happened over the last few years in terms of how digital advertising is happening. The second fundamental shift is that most of the advertising, which is most of the ads you see on your mobile phone, are being procured programmatically. What that means is that it's not really around one company going out and doing a partnership with a large publishing company or a large game to serve ads onto their sites. Anybody who's out there in the ecosystem can potentially do that. So all the advertising trading, bulk of it is happening programmatically, and we can spend a lot more time on it, but I guess that's not the focus of that discussion. Now those two fundamental shifts, one is the consolidation which has happened with the two big players, and second is the trading which is happening primarily on programmatic channels. What that does, it creates actually an ease for each one of you who's trying to pursue a mobile app strategy. So from going to an era where you were evaluating partners, whether an ad network or a publisher would make most sense for you, today what you can safely assume is that most companies out there who are established companies, who are top companies running mobile advertising or ad tech businesses, can potentially reach out to almost the same number of audiences. Now I may be hurting a few people out here, but I guess that's the reality of the matter. When you see companies are not selling themselves that a particular advertising company is making you reach 500 million users and the other is making reach 550 million users, I think those numbers have become meaningless. Given that everything is happening programmatically, most top companies can reach out to pretty much the entire set of the mobile advertising ecosystem. Now, what you need to look at is that now with all potential partners who are coming out to selling to me can reach out to the same audiences, what is it and how is it that I'm going to make my strategy so that I can derive greatest ROI and help the right users download my app rather than any random guy downloading my app and adding numbers in terms of pure number of downloads, but not really adding in terms of transactions or ROI. So I think that's where the whole strategy around unification makes a big difference. Now just like most companies today are doing, app businesses have progressed from doing a lot of search or PPC based advertising. Just that in PPC you would not have two partners bidding for you for the same keywords because you are actually cross bidding and making your bid higher. Similarly in mobile advertising, when you're going on and pursuing an app acquisition or an app user acquisition strategy, clearly unification and ensuring that you can spend your entire dollars on one singular platform will lead to greater cost efficiency because you will not be cross bidding your own self, which is the last thing you would want to do. The second is that a lot of data which you are doing, a lot of optimizations which you are doing will be at an overall marketing spend level rather than at a sub-segment of the marketing spend level, which is what will happen if you are working with multiple partners. So while there are 50, 100 companies out there who are trying to take a share of your wallet from when you have built the app to when you have used the user, what may make a big difference in terms of the kind of ROI you make is how you unify that and ensure that you're choosing one partner out there who's unifying you in terms of reaching you to the right audiences, but doing a lot more audience optimizations and intelligence, which is building self-learning around your money spent. Because when you've spent your first $100 and when you're spending your second 100, if the first 100 and the second 100 are not correlated, that's not really driving ROI. When you can learn from the first 100 and ensure that the next 100 is spent in a better, more optimum way, that's where you can build that, and I think that advantage comes to you if you're working over a single platform, a unified platform strategy. So I think that's a critical component which will make your audience acquisition efforts much more meaningful from a data perspective and also from a cost efficiency perspective. The second is around, you've acquired the users. Now obviously I have just half an hour, I can talk 40 minutes on just the first part, but just in the interest of time walking beyond that to the second point, which is usage and behavior. Now, once you've built out that you've got an audience which is using your app, I think it becomes critical to look at what kind of data are you looking at for that. Now, for that, actually, I look at 3 core areas where, as app owners or as companies, e-commerce companies, travel companies, how we are building data or intelligence for ourselves. The first is really data which comes in, so I would want you to look at the left side on this screen. So the first is data which comes from behavior, which is how consumers are using your app, how they're consuming content on it. Second is the area of intelligence which comes through attribution, where you have spent your money over multiple channels. You've advertised your app by front page ad in the Times of India, you're running your ads on TV, you're buying tons of advertising on mobile advertising, you're doing Google, Facebook, pretty much the works, whatever somebody tells you, you're doing that to ensure that you can reach the right audience. Attribute that, use that intelligence, reuse that to understand the user from a particular source, what kind of habits is he or she displaying, and how can that intelligence be used to further better the ROI on your mobile app strategy. And the third is really flowing back of commerce or sales data. I think those 3 are the key pillars: behavioral signals, attribution data, and commerce data. I think if all 3 can actually flow back into a singular audience intelligence kind of a cloud where you are harnessing that data, what that does is that from that data you are actually deriving insights which are helping A, make your mobile app experience much better, and B, ensuring that your mobile advertising or the mobile procurement strategy leads to greater ROI. So I think what we see out there is that I see a lot of companies, most of the top companies out there, working with, even in this current scenario, working with multiple partners. They would buy media from one guy, they would use Google Analytics or any third-party attribution tool to tell them how it's worked, finally looking at building segments from there, retargeting there on other platforms. So I think that creates a way that you are actually losing a lot of user intelligence, and a lot of optimizations which you are doing is not really real-time optimizations, which is what digital advertising today allows you to do. So I think it's a critical component around integrating all that intelligence on a singular audience intelligence cloud and reusing it both from an app experience and from a app procurement perspective. Here again, I think the challenge comes in that given the way most large organizations are structured, the product teams would possibly be different. Like a lot of insights coming to the marketing team are helping making the advertising strategy better, but the same insights, the same data can actually be used to make the mobile app experience also better. And I think making it a single dashboard which is available to whether it's the product lead or the marketing lead, where they can go in and track all of that, I think makes a huge difference in terms of what you're doing in terms of building ROI on your mobile app strategy, and what you're doing in terms of maximizing the transactions or loyalty to the to your business, which is driven around mobile apps. So I think clearly from usage and behavior, I think those 3 are the key metrics, which is where I would urge that anybody who's looking to create success on that, I think definitely consider that, because that's the way you'll be able to harness the power of the data which you have. Otherwise, it will be data residing at different places, different dashboards, looking nice, but not really being reusable. And I think that is what is, I think, the biggest challenge of data. A lot of companies around big data, a lot of analytics, but good to know may not always be actionable. Put them together, make it actionable, and you create much greater ROI on what you're doing. The third segment, I think once you've done the data analysis, is really around CRM, segmentation, re-engagement, different ways to express the similar emotion or the similar objective which different product owners, different marketers would have. Now here, why, if you see today there are lots of e-commerce companies out there, and I think India is one of the first few markets where e-commerce companies are actually building app first and app only transaction strategies. Few have already moved there, some others are slated to move there. Now the big reason why people are investing so much in the app economy, I think re-engagement is one of the primary criteria for that. Because unlike the PC internet, where once you have a user, to get him back, you need to obviously advertise to ensure that he comes back to your site. In case of an app, once you've had it on his phone, his or her phone, the re-engagement is not just through advertising, but it's also through push notifications, which I think, as most companies who are today running an app business would understand, may in most cases be the most optimum way in terms of re-engaging users. So really these two are the most important real estates which you have in terms of re-engagement, both in terms of push notifications and reaching out to the guys who have shown interest in your product, who have either come to your sites, not registered, or bought something and left it on the cart. How is it that you re-engage these guys on both your own media, and that when you're re-engaging on your own media, the good part is you're not spending money. Google or Facebook is not becoming richer by you re-engaging with your own audiences. So I think that's a significant differentiator and a big advantage which an app strategy gives you versus a mobile web or a PC kind of strategy. And the second is that not just limit it yourself to the world of your own app users, but really go beyond that. And I think that's where interportability of data becomes very, very important. So if you're running it over a singular unified interface, what advantage that does is that if you've got a segment of users who are purchasers or heavy buyers of a particular kind of goods, you can really segment them and reach out to the same segment through push notification and advertising. Rather than push notification being driven within your product and advertising data actually flowing out, you're actually transporting user IDs, giving it out to some other external partner, which obviously comes in with its privacy challenges, comes in with its data security challenges. So from all perspectives, does not really make too much sense. So if you can run it on a singular platform, I think that's what makes the entire strategy around CRM re-engagement far more fulfilling and far greater in terms of ROI and business gain for you. So I think that's really on the CRM and engagement part. I think coming to the last part, so now we've looked at user acquisition, trying to demystify small things which can make a big difference out there. Second is around usage and data. And the third is really around CRM and re-engagement. I think all these three things put together will ensure that you're building greater loyalty and ROI to the mobile app business which you're doing. If you look at it, when I started the presentation, this is what my graph looked like. This was the life cycle which was illustrated, which is what most app owners are going through at different stages of their life. Now I think what is the key message or the key takeout which I would want each one of you to look at from this, I think are to ensure that you are addressing the two missing pieces on this. And the two missing pieces out here are these. One is an arrow. Now why is an arrow a missing piece? I think that to me is a missing piece to most companies pursuing their mobile app strategy. They're doing the first four well, but they're not building a way for channeling the learnings of the first three steps towards making your audience procurement, audience acquisition, audience experience much more optimized. So I think that small arrow out there ensures that your data is flowing seamlessly all through, and you're keeping audience analytics at the core where all these things are happening, but all data is residing with you, optimizable across multiple ad networks, ad exchanges. So I think that ensures that if you're building and you're acquiring audiences who are more likely to convert, there is higher likelihood of those audiences being loyal, there is higher likelihood of those audiences buying on your apps versus others who may just be adding numbers and making your Google Play ranks to go up. But finally, that's all intermediary steps for most companies who are running businesses through mobile apps. Loyalty and transactions finally becomes the key metrics. Maybe you're not seeing it today, but eventually you would see it, because that's the way the business will become sound and will become successful. So I think putting that all together, ensuring that the analytics is at the center, I think ensures that all of that can happen much more seamlessly. Very quickly recapping, I think in terms of what I've really talked about, and I think we'll break up into a Q&A post that. Around measuring and maximizing returns from your mobile apps, I think one is reiterating again and again around unification of platform, both from a cost efficiency, second from a data usage, data efficiency, optimization perspective. Really one of the most critical components of making your mobile app strategy successful. And for your enterprise, which is a mobile app only or a mobile app driven enterprise, outscore the others out there which may be following strategies which may not be so well in sync with that. So clearly unified platform and user data. Transparency of placements, a key area given that how the ad tech ecosystem is far more fragmented than what many of us think who are not so deeply into it. So understanding the transparency of placements and optimization capability comes back to the app owner or the marketer who's promoting the app is of paramount importance, and do ensure that you are building that as a key KPI in terms of when you are evaluating and finalizing the kind of partners you would work with. Attribution of event by source, again something which see a lot of companies which are companies which have got app-only strategies but still not doing full justice to it. They'll be doing the first level of event analysis in terms of what the user is doing in terms of registration, but building segments around transactions, building key value pairs around how different segments of your audiences are transacting on what kind of goods, reusing that data. So building that attribution intelligence of event by source, reusing that will ensure that the users you're acquiring are leading to meaningful gains for your business. And finally, reusable analytics and audience intelligence. I think data is great, dashboards, nice looking dashboards are good to have, but finally if that data is not actionable, it's just good to have. It's nice to put in your PowerPoint presentations or your quarterly reviews, but doesn't lead to anything meaningful, or maybe not as meaningful as it could. Like you could still make offline decision making, which is good, but it's not leading to the optimum returns from it. So I think reusability of analytics and audience intelligence, so I think these are 3 or 4 key pegs which I would hope that as companies who are building app strategies, we are all focusing on. And I think if we are focusing on ensuring that these are the pegs we are evaluating our partners by, I think there is much higher likelihood of the apps we build, of the money we spend to get users, those users actually contributing back to us and giving us returns in terms of business and loyalty. So I think that's broadly what I had to talk about. I think I've pretty much exhausted most of my time, but leaves around 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A. So happy to take that on from you out here or from other media, whether it's Twitter or email. I think feel free to get in touch with me. But in case any of you have questions here, we can shoot and be happy to address that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, any questions? Please do raise your hands. We'll have the mics passed on to you.
Good. All good. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar. Thank you again. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, as you've all taken a good look at the agenda, that now leaves us with our next set of sessions. But here's an announcement before we do that. First thing is, the first announcement that we have is that we have an exciting contest here. As you can all see, we have the hashtag GrowEcom. So maximum relevant tweets and you stand chance to win some very exciting prizes. That's one. Second, there's also a very exciting lucky draw which is being hosted by MSG 91. So all you got to do is drop your business cards or visiting cards at the MSG 91 stall. Then we're going to have some wonderful lucky draw there as well. Most importantly, while we will now be breaking for tea, please do note that we're going to have little special effects inside the hall here. We're going to be doing a little partition of the hall. This part of the hall will be ballroom number 1, and on the other side would be ballroom number 2. So while we do the special effects of putting up a partition, please do note, as per your agenda, the ballroom number 1 will be hosting the session on Shop with a Tap, Scaling Up M-Commerce. On the other side, we'll be having the session on impact of travel marketplaces for the online travel market. So please do take a very good look at the agendas so that you are appropriately seated for your relevant sessions. The scheduled tea break is for 15 minutes. We'll be back in 15 minutes in our relevant sessions. So please do enjoy the tea break. See you soon.